Throughout Jujutsu Kaisen, the sorcerers of today channel their negative emotions to utilize cursed energy and exorcise cursed spirits. But during the Heian era a millennia ago, Jujutsu sorcery was at its peak, and although many had grown their capabilities to a level they were comfortable or satisfied with, one man still felt that there had to be more to cursed energy and Jujutsu sorcery that humanity had yet to fully attain. And with that notion as the only thing occupying his mind, he would undergo a grandiose endeavor spanning across several centuries so that he may satisfy his intellectual curiosity, that man being none other than Kenjaku, a man of many names, known to be the most evil sorcerer to have ever lived. Before we proceed any further into the video, the Jujutsu Kaisen anime has made its way up to the midpoint of the story. However, I make content from the perspective of a manga reader, so while my focus will include some already adapted anime material, I will be mentioning several points from the manga as well to better shed light on Kenjaku so that we may attain a broader, more conclusive image regarding his character, and therefore I will issue you a heavy manga spoiler warning in advance. If you are not caught up, you have been warned. With that being said, both knowledge regarding much of the history surrounding the Heian era as well as Kenjaku's time within it or his early life are shrouded in mystery. But we do know a few key details important to note in regards to Kenjaku in particular, the most predominant being that he tutored or at least aided the legendary Ryomen Sukuna in his plot to cheat death in order to traverse the ages long after his demise as a cursed object that no sorcerer could destroy by sealing pieces of his soul into each of his 20 fingers. But this single detail of his past alone already tells us a great deal about Kenjaku. Even centuries after its conclusion, the Heian era is widely recognized to be the golden age of Jujutsu sorcery, when all who were able pushed themselves to the brink of their limits to perfect the use of their cursed energy and properly grasp the nature of their cursed technique down to its very core. Sukuna would slaughter sorcerer after sorcerer over the course of this period in history in order to rise to the top, something that I'm sure Kenjaku found his own joy in spectating for quite some time, as although he isn't necessarily the fighter type, given as to how he politely declines the older Kashimo's challenge and opts to instead utilize his domain against Yuki rather than go through the arduous process of dealing with her technique, a trait still central to who Kenjaku is, as well as a characteristic that's passively observable over the course of the story and that dictates every single one of his actions throughout, is his fascination with Jujutsu, the battles that take place wielding it, along with its effects on humanity's development across the ages. But even after living in what's largely agreed to be the heyday of Jujutsu, something had troubled him, a notion that although he had witnessed the best of his era hit the peak of their potential and take that peak to challenge Sukuna for his blood-spattered throne, it still wasn't enough. Sorcerers, humans, and cursed spirits, these are all possibilities of cursed energy in the form of human beings, and yet there must be more to human potential. After observing the countless battles that define this time period, Kenjaku would embark on a quest pursuing after a single yet grandiose purpose, taking humanity beyond what it's shown itself capable of in its current form to optimize its use of cursed energy, and it's easy to see why Kenjaku believed himself to be the one who could achieve said optimization by utilizing not only his robust, intricate knowledge of Jujutsu surpassing even those wielding greater power than himself, but through the use of his cursed technique alongside it. Kenjaku's technique allows him to transplant his brain into and switch bodies with another person, and once this transplant is complete, he gains not only the cursed technique of the new host and their memories, but their cursed energy overlaps and disguises his own as well. This means that not only did Kenjaku possess the necessary knowledge, but that like Sukuna, Kenjaku could extend his years beyond that of any normal human in pursuit of his goals. As mentioned prior, we aren't privy to much of the information surrounding Kenjaku's early life or how he came to know his own technique, but I imagine that once he discovered it, the idea of indefinitely lengthening his lifespan had already instilled the conviction that he was meant to discover great heights into Kenjaku, that through transcending his own body together with the fragility of human life, he was conceived to accomplish more than humanity could comprehend. And as Chozo says, if Kenjaku could extend his life from moving body to body, then nothing is truly impossible. With the hopes to observe the further evolution of humanity driving him, Kenjaku wasted no time and immediately got to work. Over the course of 1,000 years, Kenjaku would painstakingly forge countless binding vows with millions of cursed spirits and hundreds of sorcerers, preying upon individual characteristics such as their regrets, their dissatisfaction with the modest existence they've led, or their desire to fight stronger opponents than what was available in their time period, to promise them a second chance at life and, in that second life, inadvertently aiding Kenjaku's pursuit of his ambitions. But this points to another central aspect to Kenjaku's character: his charisma. While Kenjaku is undoubtedly and remarkably intelligent, the face of the shell harboring this intellect carries with it a jovial personality that wears an unassuming smirk at all times, engaging equally with those he encounters, both enemy and ally alike, and despite whatever role they may play in his plans, all while never deviating from this amiable demeanor. Whether or not this is something intrinsic to Kenjaku, perhaps if it's something he aged into or if his spirits raised the more he was able to further his own ambitions, is unknown. But I imagine Kenjaku approaching the sorcerers of of the past with what appears to be a generous opportunity offered while maintaining a neighborly disposition, he's there conscious about making the arrangement with him, making it all the more easy to engage with sorcerers in as many binding vows as he did. But as time passed, obstacles began to present themselves to Kenjaku as he continued his plans, and one obstacle appeared to be nigh unconquerable: the Six Eyes. A trait of the Gojo clan scarcely inherited even amongst themselves, users of the Six Eyes are remarkably powerful, and Kenjaku was thwarted and defeated by two different Six Eyes users in the past. Realizing that his desires could not be realized with a Six Eyes user alive somewhere in the world, Kenjaku resorted to murdering a child with the Six Eyes less than a month after their birth. But in practice, this is only a temporary answer to what would be a recurring problem of individuals born with the Six Eyes, meaning Kenjaku would have to find a more permanent solution. But in the meantime, and regardless of this specific dilemma, Kenjaku believed that he may have finally stumbled upon the path to his developmental aims. Through utilizing the body of Noritoshi Kamo, a sorcerer belonging to the prestigious Kamo clan, Kenjaku would experiment with the fusion of both human blood and flesh mixed with that of a curses, and forcibly impregnate a woman with a cursed spirit to carry this fusion. And after becoming aware that she was carrying this cursed spirit child within her womb, both her family and friends casted her out, resulting in her fleeing with the child to a temple in the mountains where she would meet her fate, as the temple was inhabited by Jujutsu sorcerers. 9 pregnancies and 9 different abortions. This woman birthing the mix of human and cursed spirit soon became an unwilling prisoner of Kenjaku's intellectual curiosity, but the results yielded still did not meet his expectations. Hoping this fusion would bring out the next level of human potential, Kenjaku only found disappointment when discovering that all 9 of his test subjects were rather underwhelming, with the most capable among them peaking at the level of what would be considered a grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerer, which, while impressive, is a far cry from the evolutionary progression that Kenjaku was hoping for, and he refers to these 9 experiments as painfully ordinary and more of the same. This failure imparted on Kenjaku that something he has created logically cannot exceed the bounds of his own potential, and what he should create is something that not even he himself could control, with the biggest obstacle in the way of Kenjaku forging this chaos once again being the Six Eyes. With this in mind, Kenjaku would find a new host in Suguru Geto and seek out the Disaster Curses, a group of cursed spirits looking to overthrow civilization as the true humans of the world, something equally as impossible to achieve without first ridding themselves of the Six Eyes, meaning that for the moment their goals align with one another's. This would lead to the creation and inciting of the Shibuya Incident. The Shibuya Incident is a pivotal moment in Kenjaku's plans, as not only did the cursed spirits that he created binding vows with finally play their role by flooding the streets of Shibuya, but Kenjaku also gained access to the prison realm years prior, meaning that rather than eradicating the Six Eyes, he may now seal them away instead, proving effective since 2 users of the Six Eyes cannot exist at the same time. This was the turning point for Kenjaku's plans, as these specific circumstances are nothing short of absolutely ideal. The Star Plasma Vessel, the Six Eyes, and Tengen are all connected by fate. The intervention of Toji Fushiguro over a decade ago shattered that fate with the murder of Riko Amanai, and sealing away the Six Eyes with Satoru Gojo serves to further destroy those destinies. The prison realm would always be the final piece, but I imagine that if anything signified to Kenjaku that now was the time to act, it was the appearance of Suguru Geto, a boy with the power to tame and manipulate cursed spirits at will, a power that Kenjaku admits to Gojo that he deeply desired, and it makes sense as to why for several different reasons. With cursed spirit manipulation, Kenjaku was no longer forced to adhere to the binding vows he had made with those cursed spirits years ago, instead forcing the monsters to do his bidding. This included Mahito, whom he captured for the purpose of utilizing his idol transfiguration curse technique to awaken 2 types of non-sorcerers, those whose brains he had altered for sorcery like Junpei Yoshino and Hiromi Higuruma, or those who he had ingest cursed objects for incarnated sorcerers like Sumiki Fushiguro and Yuji Itadori. Not only this, but without the influence of the Six Eyes and a Star Plasma Vessel halting their evolution, that natural progression has turned Tengen into something akin to a cursed spirit, likewise making them a target for Suguru Geto's cursed spirit manipulation. This perfectly leads into the next step of Kenjaku's plan, and that's the Culling Game. But before we proceed to go more in depth about the next phase of Kenjaku's plan, I'd like to talk more about the Shibuya Incident, as well as Kenjaku taking Geto as his next host. Kenjaku leaves much of the heavy lifting of the Shibuya Incident to the Disaster Curses up until the time is right to seal Gojo by using the appearance of his believed long-dead friend to catch the strongest sorcerer off guard. This correlates to something that, while only hinted at in certain key moments, I believe is instrumental to understanding Kenjaku and his role in the story, being the fact that Kenjaku, as well as the concept of someone like him, is truly terrifying. Given the manner in which he chooses his next host, he likely stalks and preys on his targets in the shadows for prolonged periods of time. Such was undoubtedly the case with Kaori and Jin Itadori, whom he had his eye on as the reincarnation of Sukuna's twin he had consumed in the womb. For one reason or another, Kaori would never bear a child with Jin at any point up until the end of her life, a death that we know next to nothing about, but if I had to speculate, was likely orchestrated by Kenjaku. Following her untimely demise, however, Kenjaku would manufacture the circumstances of the birth of Yuji Itadori in Kaori's body as not only a participant in the Culling Game, but primarily a vessel for Sukuna's long-anticipated return as well. What serves as the icing on the cake is that when Jin's father warns him about the dangers of continuing his relationship with Kaori, since he could likely sense that something was off, we catch a glimpse of Kaori herself while being possessed by Kenjaku. The way Akutami depicts the stitches on Kenjaku's head can shift over the course of the manga and from host to host quite a bit, but when they are given more form as opposed to being simple lines, the implication is likely that the stitches and self-inflicted wounds from the process of swapping hosts are beginning to heal after some time has passed. This makes sense when looking at Kenjaku's other hosts such as the unnamed man from the Edo period, paired with how Geto's begin to heal until his encounter against the duo of Choso and Yuki, and thus needing to heal once more, as is depicted in Shinjuku Showdown. All this meaning Kenjaku actually resided within Kaori as a vessel for quite some time, enough for the scars to appear fully healed, all while flying under the radar, blending in with this unsuspecting family as a truly insidious interloper. And it's this terror of defiling and presenting the appearance of the fallen from one's past that Kenjaku uses to disorient Gojo before sealing him. Although with that aside, there is narrative significance to Kenjaku choosing Geto as a host, since in a way, Kenjaku is carrying on Geto's ideal, albeit with a twist. After his own set of traumas and eventual disillusionment with the ways of Jujutsu tech, Geto desired to reshape the world into that of only Jujutsu sorcerers. Kenjaku desires a similar path, but rather he believes in optimizing cursed energy and awakening the potential in humanity, as opposed to breaking away from threats caused by cursed energy through eliminating all non-sorcerers, as Geto concluded. Illustrated in how he picks up where Geto left off in his conversation with Yuki, then makes the distinction. Though everyone on Earth being a sorcerer may not sound too bad on the surface, since it would appear all are now on an even playing field, Kenjaku's sole motivation behind this philosophy is recreating the violence and carnage of the Heian era, going to show how easily beliefs like Geto's and Yuki's, though they sincerely care for sorcerer kind, can be warped into something far more depraved. This is demonstrated in the Culling Game, with the many different sorcerers of many different eras entering their respective colonies. The unprecedented amounts of cursed energy gathering in one place is sufficient to fuse the human population of Japan with Tengen in an act known as the merger. Forging this monstrosity is what Kenjaku believes he must create as the entity to surpass the bounds of his own potential and force humanity to the next stage of evolution. Though he is at the heart of its creation and solely responsible for its events, Kenjaku actually doesn't do much to discuss during the Culling Game. However, we are given more context as it pertains to Kenjaku's relationship with Sukuna before his fight against Gojo. Sukuna is a more than interesting character that deserves a video in his own right. But for the moment, Sukuna, like Kenjaku, solely engages with what captivates him, but he differentiates himself from the mastermind by unapologetically destroying and wiping away the rest. Their initial relationship during the time of the Heian era is largely unclear, but it's certain that Kenjaku presenting this plot to Sukuna all those years ago enticed the King of Curses. Though this is the case, Kenjaku has remained at the forefront even to the modern day, committing all sorts of atrocities in service of their scheme. With this in mind, there should be no reservations in the hearts and minds of the audience when declaring that Kenjaku is in reality a much worse evil than Sukuna. To reiterate, it could be said that Sukuna is the brawn or muscle of their operation, but Kenjaku is the brains, the dastardly mastermind behind all of it, and therefore responsible for far more of the unspeakable crimes committed along the path of their shared goals. This is something highlighted by the very King of Curses when he finds himself repulsed, saying Kenjaku does the grossest things, and highlighted by Kusakabe later when weighing their options, believes having Sukuna around would be preferable to Kenjaku, considering that Sukuna likely isn't interested in performing bizarre and perverse acts of sorcery-based terrorism purely for his own amusement. While one can argue that this isn't all solely for entertainment, since there are moments where Kenjaku shows himself to truly believe in the cause of humanity's evolution towards the next step of their potential, this is directly contrasted by other admissions, such as when he implies to Chozo that he would be just as satisfied with the results of his insurmountable years of work if the merger turned out to be nothing more than a giant funny face. Which brings us to Kenjaku's last opponent before the end of his very long life, and that's Takaba. Many longtime readers of Jujutsu Kaisen were not pleased with Kenjaku's death orchestrated by Takaba's curse technique, and even to this day, feeling that the amount of importance placed on him as an antagonist, perhaps surpassing even that of Sukuna, he should have had a more direct conflict with the cast. While I understand where everyone is coming from, it's imperative to understand the importance of the encounter between the two and what it means for Kenjaku's character. When inquiring about why Kenjaku resigned himself to his ambitions, he declines to repeat himself, considering he just told Hazanoki prior, but does respond to Takaba's question by saying that if something more entertaining came along, he could possibly forget about his plot spanning a millennia entirely. From this moment onward, Takaba resolves himself to entertain Kenjaku with his comedy, and though he criticizes his material and delivery at points, by the end of the technique cycle as the two begin their comedy show, Kenjaku is thoroughly engaged. This is where Kenjaku's character reaches its logical and natural conclusion, considering that if all the death and destruction caused over his centuries of life can all be pointed back to his need for entertainment from the merger, if he were to be equally entertained by something else as Takaba inquired earlier, then each of these occurrences orchestrated by Kenjaku, as well as his need for the merger entirely, should logically cease. This is illustrated by Kenjaku telling Takaba not to ruin the moment with tears, which quickly results in his death following, where he remarks that although not all the years of his life were worthwhile, he's content to meet his end after playing with Takaba. In a way, this fitting end to Kenjaku's character is somewhat of a meta commentary, as not only does Kenjaku possess big ideas for himself with grandiose plots and goals, but the audience of Jujutsu Kaisen did as well for what direction they wanted his character to take as the story reached its conclusion, only for both to have the rug pulled out from under them by Takaba and the absurdity of his curse technique. At the end of it all, Kenjaku was an undeniably captivating figure to spectate, a sorcerer who, despite his cheery demeanor paired with remarkable knowledge regarding Jujutsu, in reality was leagues more frightening and depraved than even the king of curses, Sukuna himself. A villain who I believe is easily one of the greatest who graced the pages of the weekly shonen magazine, and some may find his end to be a disappointment, but Kenjaku's story follows a natural and logical progression that could only come from a villain so coldly intelligent and brutally pragmatic. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. Thank you for watching another one of my videos. I have others about Jujutsu Kaisen on the channel that you may enjoy if you like this one, but I plan to make even more videos about Jujutsu Kaisen with a couple big projects regarding the series coming soon, along with various other topics in the future, so subscribe for free to be notified of what I get up to in the future, such as when I upload or stream. Like this video to support both the channel and myself, as well as let me know that this is the type of content you want to see. Let me know in the comments below if I missed anything or other topics you'd like to see me cover in the future. Thank you all for watching and have a great rest of your day.